This episode contains material that might be triggering for some. If you need to stop the podcast at any time to take care of yourself, please do so.
If you need support, you can call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 988. Dialectical behavior therapy was created in the 1980s by Marsha Linehan in Seattle, Washington.
Today, DBT is taught all over the world.
We're two therapists who believe everyone can benefit from DBT skills.
I'm Kate.
I'm Michelle.
And this is DBT and Me.
Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to our March episode. And today you get me and a special guest who I'm going to be telling you more about in just a minute. But unfortunately, we don't have Kate today, which is a bummer. I don't think Kate would mind me sharing this with all of you. I know Kate has been really open about her relationship with her mom and some of the struggles there. And unfortunately, Kate's mom had a recent medical emergency, and Kate needed to prioritize being with her today instead of being here recording with Diana and I. So that's a bummer that we don't have Kate, but hopefully, fingers crossed, next month for our April episode, she will be back. So before we get into introducing Diana and sharing our topic for today, what Kate and I wanted to promote this month is in our Etsy shop, we created ages and ages ago a PDF workbook for DBT skills. So this is easily downloadable from Etsy. A lot of you have purchased it, which we super appreciate. And for those of you who may be new or haven't gotten your hands on it yet, it costs $7.50. So relatively affordable, all things considered, as far as DBT resources go. And we're going to put the link to it in the show notes. And we highly recommend getting your hands on it, especially if you're new to DBT, just starting to work through the skills and get familiar. Having a resource like this can really help you if you're DBT self-taught. And so we want to make sure that we came back to that since we've had it out for a while, but it's been quite a bit of time since we talked about it. So we'll put that link down in the show notes for the workbook. And as far as this topic goes for today with our episode, we don't do this super often, but it's something that I think we really want to start doing more, which is letting our guests that we have on really share their stories. And so, Diana, I'm so excited for today because we're not only going to hear how much DBT knowledge you have, because you're going to be sharing as we get, deeper into the episode. I know you're going to be sharing a lot of great skills ideas with our listeners of different skills that they can be turning to with particular struggles. But we're not just going to get to learn about, your professional knowledge today. We're going to get to learn about you, like who you are as a person, and all that you have been through in your life to bring you to where you are today. And I think it's going to be really inspirational for a lot of our listeners to just get to know you and hear your story. So I'm very excited for this. But to start, it would be great if you can just tell our listeners a little bit about, you professionally and who you are today before we get going deeper into things.
Thank you so much for having me. Hi, everyone. My name is Diana Ramirez. I'm a licensed professional clinical counselor in Los Angeles, California. I specialize in trauma and dialectical behavioral therapy. Believe it or not, becoming a therapist was not my original plan. After my undergrad, I had a very clear and focused goal to become a police officer with the LAPD. This was a dream that was encouraged by my sisters. You can say they viewed this role with great respect. I also saw this as an opportunity to bring justice to a broken world and to serve my community. part of my story I will share more about later. Seeking this goal led me in an unexpected direction. I began my academic journey at community college, where I earned my AA in criminal justice, and later my bachelor's in criminology and justice studies from Cal State University of Northridge. Everything shifted after taking a domestic violence course that introduced me to clinical forensic psychology and the possibility of pursuing higher education. I went on to attend the Chicago School of Professional Psychology, and through my coursework, internships, and clinical experiences, I discovered that therapy was not just a profession, it was my calling. One of the most impactful experiences for me was interning at a shelter for women and children experiencing homelessness. Their stories really deepened my understanding of trauma, resilience, and this confirmed my desire to serve.
Oh, that's incredible where you started from with no desire to necessarily end up, like we could say, in the mental health field. And then it was like along the path, you just got introduced to these little things or had these experiences that almost to me sound like they just nudged you a little bit in this direction before you eventually became a therapist. So that's super cool to your background professionally like that. Yeah. So we have two questions we ask all of our guests. So I will go ahead and ask you the first one, which is when you first got DBT and what drew you to it.
It was in 2022. I graduated with my master's during this time, and I started working at a local nonprofit. As part of my job, I received formal DBT training and began using it in both individual and group therapy. I wouldn't say there was a specific moment or experience that really drew me to DBT. Um, a training was available, and I saw this as an opportunity to help my clients. Over time, DBT became much more than a clinical framework. It provided me with skills, not only to support my clients, but also tools that changed my own approach to life, relationships, and even my own emotional regulation. Seeing the impact both personally and professionally is what I believe has made DBT such a meaningful part of my life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I can relate to that because I was also sort of thrust into DBT a little bit. Like I worked at a girls group home and it was like, well, you need to take these girls to DBT group every week. And I was like, okay, I don't know what that is, but it's part of my job. I've got to go. I've got to take them there. And then same thing with being in community mental health. They're like, well, we need somebody to lead the DBT group. Hey, Michelle, you do it. I'm like, okay, like I'll do this DBT thing. But exactly like you, that it's like once you're in it, then at some point it's like, hold on a second. This is actually really legitimately helpful. And then it goes from being just something that, oh, okay, this will be good to do with my clients to like, wait, I'm like passionate about this. So I can relate to that progression of things. Second question here that we ask everybody. What is your favorite thing about DBT and also your least favorite thing? If there's anything you could change about it.
This is such a good question. My favorite thing about DBT is how automatic the skills can become over time. After repeated practice, the skills become second nature, making it easier to cope with everyday struggles. One practice I really value is called skill stacking, which is something I also pair with subjective units of distress.
Mhm.
For example, if my distress is at a 6 or higher, I start with distress tolerance skills, and then I can layer in self-soothing, distraction, or other regulating strategies as needed. As far as my least favorite part of DBT, is how it can initially feel invalidating for some clients. I have had that experience. Even though validation is such a core component of the model, I think being taught skills to manage emotions can sometimes feel like just being told to cope rather than being fully understood, especially because DBT is not very trauma heavy, right? Like process.
Right. Yep.
The amount of homework and practice can also feel overwhelming, especially for clients who are experiencing depression, low motivation, or executive functioning challenges. Now, finally, right, progress in DBT can feel slow, and clients may become discouraged when consistent practice does not immediately lead to relief, even though meaningful change often happens over time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I almost think of it as like with both what you were describing as the thing you like and the thing that, you could recognize can be maybe hard about DBT is it's like, yeah, DBT has all of these skills that if we are really diligent in practicing them, it's like, hey, here is like a path paved before you. It's like, here, this is how to cope. It's all right here. Isn't that amazing? So that we can get really good at knowing what skills we need at different times, depending on how distressed we are. And also, it's acknowledging that that road is a long one, right? It does take a lot of time to get there. I totally, would echo what you were saying about how it can feel invalidating for clients sometimes is like, how to show clients that like, no, your your emotions are fine just as they are. We don't want to change that. It's just what you do with them. But that can take a while for people to really grasp. So yeah, that was a great answer to that question. I've heard a lot of answers to that question over the years, and I really like yours. Okay, so now that we've, really got our introductory questions out of the way, we are going to rewind and go back a number of years because, when I met you on our meet and greet call, you shared with me a little bit about your early life. So you were born and raised in Honduras until you were 13 years old. What were those early years of your life like?
Like many people, I was faced with a lot of adversity from a very young age. At 9 months old, I suffered a 3-degree burn that affected my developmental growth. I spent many months in the hospital and had to undergo multiple surgeries. This was one of the reasons I was determined to move to the US because I had essentially outgrown all the resources that were available back in my home country, Honduras. Being the youngest of 8 siblings, I also grew up very independent. Most of my older siblings had already moved to the US, which made it more difficult, especially since my mother was murdered when I was 4 years old. This is the difficult experience I alluded to earlier. As you can imagine, being raised by a single middle-aged father can really affect the development of a young girl. It did give me an opportunity to see my father's work ethic as he owned and operated a farm.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Yeah. Um, oh, to hear you share, this just hits home a little bit for me because my husband was severely burned when he was 6 years old. So to hear that part of your story is being a burn survivor, I just, yeah, I know some of the challenges that can come with that. He's undergone a ton of surgeries as well. And yeah, it's such a difficult experience to go through. And then, yeah, losing your mom so tragically at a young age. Oh, that is just something, that the impact of that I think is beyond words to explain how that just changes the trajectory of a person's life. So, yeah, you faced a lot of challenges long before you ever, immigrated here to the US. So, um, yeah, I'm sure there's tons more we could share and talk about your early life. I know just for the sake of time, we're getting really the clip notes here. So we're going to fast forward to when you're 13. So you now come to the US as an unaccompanied minor. So I would love to hear more about how this decision came about for you to immigrate here. And once you were here, like what were the biggest challenges you faced along the way?
As you said earlier, there's so many stories. We could probably spend like multiple hours just
3 hours here, right?
talking about them. Um, um, when I was 13, the decision for me to come to the US was made after conversations between my father and my older sister about my medical needs. I think that was the main focus at the time. I had burns that were affecting my proper growth and require medical procedures that were more accessible here in the US. Coming here also meant an opportunity to pursue higher education, as well as to meet my sisters and get closer to them.
Yeah.
The 3-month journey, because it did take me 3 months to get to the US,
Wow.
was filled with many challenges. I traveled with coyotes, some connected to cartels, crazy experiences with many risks. At one point, I was separated in Oaxaca, Mexico, and became lost. But I was helped by a good Samaritan couple who treated me to a delicious soup. I still remember that soup. It was heaven. They also protected me and eventually reunited me with the coyotes. For several days, I traveled on top of an infamous train known as La Bestia. The biggest risk was falling, serious injury, and death. I also had to cross the Rio Grande, despite not knowing how to swim, which was an extremely scary experience. Eventually, I was detained by immigration authorities, who treated me kindly. One officer offered me water and an apple from his own lunch bell. By this time, I had been walking for several hours and was severely dehydrated. I spent 3 days in a detention center, isolated from the men. I was then transferred to a foster group home in Texas, where I spent the next 52 days. I was treated with kindness and had the opportunity to meet other youth who were also going through similar struggles.
Wow. I mean, there's challenges here on multiple levels. I think what really stands out to me hearing you share all that is the physical challenges, right? Like riding on top of a train and trying to, yeah, cross. I have no idea how. I know it's of course a major body of water, but I have no idea how big actually like the Rio Grande is. But you can't swim, and you're trying to traverse this body of water. You're walking for hours at a time. I mean, just what you physically endured is so much. But then just the psychological challenges, right? Of I'm lost, right? Being lost anywhere is a disorienting experience for anybody. So psychologically, that's very scary. You mentioned these different people that you encountered along the way, this Good Samaritan couple, as some kind officers at the border, but never really knowing who these people are. How are they going to treat you? Is this going to make things better? Is this going to make things worse? That mental challenge is immense. And you're 13. I mean, you're young and you're going through all of this. I mean, oh, that that is incredible. Um, so now with this part of your story, you're here in the US. And what was that experience like for you once you were here? Like how did you cope with the obstacles you were facing? Because I'm sure you were facing, you know, many obstacles once you were actually here.
Oh, most definitely. I think at first it was a huge culture shock. I didn't speak any English, and I also had to adjust to a new life with my sisters as my guardians and everything that came with that. School was very difficult. I was trying to learn a new language while also trying to make friends, which was also a huge struggle for me. I experienced bullying in middle school, which made it even harder to adjust. I was living with my loving sisters who truly meant well, but their attention was divided as they had their own families to raise. And as far as coping, I developed internal rebellion, people pleasing, perfectionism, performance anxiety. And that's really how I try to survive and make sense of it all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. Um, with what you named of like I didn't speak any English. I was struggling with just, being in this academic environment, not knowing the language, but struggling socially too. I mean, I think most people would agree that, like, again, being 13 years old is just a hard, challenging time of life.
Mhm.
But that's even under the best of circumstances. It could just be hard to be 13 years old. And
Mm.
then we add on all of the adapting that you were doing. I mean, yeah, just to really like keep your head above water. I imagine every day when you would wake up, just face another day of going to school would be really, really difficult. Yeah. Yeah. Um, so when you look back at those first few years after coming to the US, um, of course, at that time, you had no idea what DBT was. But when with what you know now of DBT, and when you look back, in retrospect, what DBT skills do you think you were using to get through everything?
Looking back, I can see that I was using many of those skills without realizing it. I practiced radical acceptance. I had to face my reality and adapt to a new country and a new language. I distracted myself often to avoid ruminating. I became good at entertaining others and staying busy. I was also using a lot of distress tolerance. I pushed myself through fear, loneliness, and uncertainty during medical treatments and major life transitions. I forced myself to step out of my comfort zone, and I didn't know them as DBT skills back then, but the foundation was the same.
Yeah, yeah. Um, I think, yeah, I mean, first thing you said was radical acceptance. Um, yes. Kay and I say all the time, I don't know if you agree, but we say all the time that we think radical acceptance is the hardest DBT skill. I see you nodding. Yeah. It's incredibly difficult. And when you're just looking around of like, okay, these are what my circumstances are.
Mhm.
You know, this is what my reality is living with my sisters. This is what my reality is at school. Um, and I have to adapt and face what is rather than thinking about how I wish things were or how things used to be. I'm sure you were probably at times incredibly homesick, which would make perfect sense. And also, right, this is where dialectics come in because it was like feeling that sadness of missing everything that you had once known in your life. And also, I can't just stay there. I have to also find something in me to want to create a new life here. Yeah. Um, and when you say also like, yeah, relying heavily on distress tolerance to get you through fear, loneliness, uncertainty, uh, absolutely, right? Kate and I say often too that the distress tolerance skills are there for when we're facing stressful things that are really beyond our control, right? Like we can't control the events. That 100% applies to everything you have shared so far. I mean, so much outside of your control. Um, that, yeah, you did. You had to figure out some kind of way to like, yeah, almost like tend to yourself, like you said a little bit too, like, staying busy, distracting yourself. Like, yeah, you would have to lean on that to just feel like you're getting through each day. Yeah. We're going to majorly fast forward in your life again. Which is that eventually you reach this point, and you were telling us a little bit about this at the very beginning, which I loved hearing of, like, how you arrived at this point of wanting to become a therapist. So, you went to grad school, went through, the years that we go through of education and internship and all that stuff to get our degrees. What was that experience of grad school like for you?
When I decided to become a therapist, I was very determined to achieve everything I set my mind to. That's just kind of who I've been. And grad school was intense. I can say that. There were many nights with little to no sleep, but still, I genuinely enjoyed the process. I have always pushed myself academically. I was very fortunate that I was able to take college classes in the 11th grade,
Oh,
and this really pushed me outside of my comfort zone. I earned my AA and later my bachelor's. Most of my college memories revolve around completing assignments and staying focused on my goals. By the time I entered community college, I had developed a strong grasp of the language, and this meant a lot to me, especially since I did not speak any English when I first arrived in the country. Despite my efforts, socializing was still a challenge, though.
Yeah, yeah. Um, well, and especially when, you have this strong work ethic and within you and you're really dedicating yourself to pursuing, you know, all of what you needed to do academically. And even though, like you said, by the time you're in college, it's like, okay, I've got a better grasp of English and everything. I mean, still, anybody who's pursued their master's degree can tell you it takes a lot of time, a lot of effort. And so you were giving this your all. And yeah, I imagine that didn't leave much space for socializing, but also maybe still felt kind of hard to know like where your place was socially or just to feel comfortable with other people too. Um, yeah. But like you said, nights with little to no sleep. Yeah, that is true. But you did it. Yeah, something to feel hugely proud of. So we're gonna shift our questions from here on out a little bit, right? So up until this point, quite a few personal questions about you specifically, but now we really want to take, your lived experience as well as your knowledge of DBT and ask you some questions that hopefully will be applicable to some of our listeners more broadly. So when you think about other immigrants who are assimilating to life in the US and adjusting, what DBT skills do you think would be most helpful for them?
Mm. When people immigrate, their brains is often in survival mode. The amygdala is on high alert because of uncertainty, risk, and feeling like they do not belong. Something I can very much relate to. While at the same time, they're learning a new language, culture, and a way of life. Because of this, DBT skills like mindfulness to stay grounded, the stress tolerance to get through fear and uncertainty, and emotional regulation to understand grief, loss, and stress can especially be helpful, while they build stability and a life that feels worth living. The skills that I think would be the most helpful here are radical acceptance, checking the facts, and coping ahead.
Uh-huh. Yeah, great. Do you mind going a little bit more in depth to each of those three and how you see them being particularly helpful for immigrants?
Of course. Um, Radical acceptance helps immigrants accept the reality of starting over, missing family, facing barriers, and not having everything figured out yet. This reduces emotional suffering and prevents getting stuck in anger, shame, or unhelpful thought patterns. It helps them focus on building forward instead of staying stuck in what they lost, which was what you referenced earlier.
Yeah.
And then checking the facts helps challenge self doubt and fear based thoughts like, I don't belong here, I'm failing, or everyone is judging me. It replaces negative assumptions with realistic thinking, which protects self esteem and motivation. And then coping ahead can help them prepare mentally for stressful situations like interviews, court dates, and presentations so they can feel more comfortable or confident going in. This can also be combined with the tip skills from the distress tolerance module, which can help calm the body quickly when anxiety spikes before interviews, doctor visits, immigration appointments, or public speaking. It reduces panic so they can think more clearly.
Yeah. Oh, that all makes perfect sense when you take those three skills and really look at how those could be applied to just daily life challenges that are, so common that immigrants are facing. Um, I can really see them all blending together, right? Like, I feel like it starts with radical acceptance first and foremost.
Mm.
Um, but then it's checking in of like, what am I telling myself about this thing?
Mhm.
You gave some great examples, right? I don't belong here. I'm failing. Everyone's judging me. Yeah, fantastic, right? So, what am I telling myself? And then how can I cope ahead? And yeah, there's so much to cope ahead for. I mean, you gave a lot of examples, and I was even thinking of more
Mm.
as you were speaking of like, it can be things like going to the grocery store. I mean, that's incredibly hard when you can't, read if you don't have a good grasp of English. Like, what are all these signs? What are all these products? Like,
Mm.
to know what you're buying, to be navigating a setting like that, or things like going to school. um yeah, there's so many challenging situations that hopefully, if using a skill like cope ahead can then change the experience before you go into it, hopefully. um yeah, that's great. Yeah, and then another topic that we wanted to address, which we know is a big one. Um, but we have actually had some listeners reach out to us, really expressing a lot of anxiety about ICE's activities,
Mm.
and where things stand currently with that. Um, so how do you see DBT skills being helpful for people, present day who are moving through the world with these fears?
Mm. First, I think it's important to validate that these fears are real and understandable. DBT teaches us to balance acceptance and change. We acknowledge the fear, and at the same time, we don't want to stay stuck in it. Even if we can't change the situation, we can work on how we respond. DBT gives us practical tools. Mindfulness of the current thought can help people notice when their thoughts begin to spiral. Radical acceptance helps them face reality without adding extra suffering. And when anxiety spikes, the tip skill can calm the body so they can think more clearly. One skill that I found myself using quite often was checking the facts. And as you can tell, I've mentioned that throughout the whole episode because
Yeah, that's great. Uh-huh.
it helps people move from thoughts like they're coming for everyone, because it can feel like that, to more precise thinking like there are enforcement actions happening in certain areas. I need accurate information and a plan and not panic. That shift alone can lower emotional intensity and increase problem solving skills.
Mhm. Yeah. Yep. Exactly, right? Check the facts is really at its core, I think, a skill that comes into play when our emotion mind starts to take over and run the show.
Mhm.
And it's like you said, we really want to validate and understand the fears about ICE are, yeah, really understandable. Like, that's the emotion we're working with here is fear. But then check the facts comes into play because we really want to look at, and you were mentioning mindfulness too, right? Present moment, right here, right now. What do I objectively know to be true?
Mhm.
And I personally love the question in Check the Facts, which is like, what is the catastrophe here and how can I prepare for the worst happening? And there could be like a really major catastrophe
Mhm.
in this scenario. Um, and also looking at, okay, so yeah, what kinds of supports can I get into place? How can I educate myself? Yeah, how can I make a plan? Because more and more there are resources coming out to really help people. So how can I tap into those rather than just having the fear overriding, you know? Um yeah, check the facts helps bring our reason mind a little more on board. So then hopefully we can make wise mind choices. Um and it's tough in big, scary situations like this, but I really think this is what makes DBT amazing. We can use these skills for just about anything and get some benefit from them. So, Yeah. I love the check the facts is a skill you keep coming back to. I think it's great. So continuing on again, thinking about some of the things that you've been through personally and how, you would recommend DBT skills helping our listeners who are in similar positions. So what DBT skills do you recommend for people who are in higher education? They're pursuing their career goals, but they may be filled with self-doubt and imposter syndrome because of their history, like, really struggling to believe that they can do this. Because I'm sure you had many moments like that yourself where you're like, I don't know if I can do this. So what would you recommend to people struggling with self-doubt and imposter syndrome?
I first want to start by saying that imposter syndrome is very real, especially in immigrant communities. It can feel like your inner self is fighting to belong in a world that was not built with you in mind. It is carrying the weight of your family's sacrifices while questioning whether you have truly earned your seat at the table. You can be succeeding on the outside and still feel like you have to prove yourself twice as much just to stay. From a DBT lens, several skills can help. Again, check the facts.
Yep.
This helps challenge thoughts like, I don't belong here, I only got in by luck. Instead of automatically believing the story self doubt tells, this skill asks, what is the actual evidence? Looking at grades, acceptance letters, feedback, and accomplishments often shows that the emotional intensity does not fully match the facts. Dialectical thinking is especially powerful for imposter syndrome. It teaches us that two things can be true at the same time. For example, I feel insecure and I am capable. I'm still learning and I deserve to be here. This reduces all or nothing thinking and creates cognitive flexibility. Opposite action is also helpful when self doubt leads to avoidance, procrastination, or staying silent. Instead of withdrawing, the person takes effective action, such as speaking in class, applying for opportunities, or sharing ideas. Confidence is often built behaviorally and not cognitively.
Yes, 100%. Kate has said this at other times on the podcast of like, the Nike slogan, right? Just do it. Sometimes that's what we need to do. We need to just do it and then trust that later on our brain will catch up, even if our brain's like, no, don't. Um, so I 100% agree with you there. I really liked your dialectic examples. The I feel insecure and I'm capable. I'm still learning and I deserve to be here. That's great. I was really just recommending something like that to a client the other day where I was like, every time that you are start thinking of all the things you haven't done yet with your to-do list that day, like, oh, I still need to do this. I haven't gotten to that yet. Think about something you've already done. Like balance it out. So anytime that somebody is finding themselves thinking like, I'm not good enough, I can't do this, got to follow it up with something else. you know, well, I did get a good grade on that last test I took. Or, I can tell that I'm starting to understand this material better or whatever it is. Um, because yeah, imposter syndrome definitely wants to look at only one side of the story.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, yeah, really, really good recommendations. Okay, our last and final question for you. We're bringing it back a little bit to you personally, because of course, Kate and I on the podcast we often share how we are using DBT in our lives because I think that's a great way for people to learn. I think we can learn very much by hearing examples from other people. So for you, we'd love to hear what does it look like, for you to use DBT yourself? And I guess included in that, like, do you have any go-to skills that you use sometimes more than others?
Um, yes, for me, using DBT in my own life often looks very simple. It's reading my Bible in the mornings. This helps me practice mindfulness and emotional regulation. It keeps me grounded and helps me start the day with intention. I also use a lot of wise mind, turning the mind, and radical acceptance pretty often. Those skills have helped reduce my internal struggles when things don't go as planned, which is quite often.
Uh-huh.
And then I would say, though, perfectionism is still a work in progress, but the thing that helps me the most is turning the mind. This really helps challenge the urges.
Mhm. Yeah. Oh, I'm with you there with the perfectionism. That's also lifelong work for
Mhm.
me. I love that you're mentioning turning the mind though, because I talk a lot about for me, I think willingness is like the most impactful DBT skill in my life. But 100% we don't get there unless we first turn the mind. We have to do that step first to even then approach doing things with a more willing attitude. Love that you're sharing what mindfulness looks like for you. That's really fantastic because I think sometimes, mindfulness is hard. It's hard to put into practice. It's hard to actually do it, even after we understand what it is and what's good about it. It's so hard to put it into practice. But yeah, that you've developed routines that help you do that. Yeah, awesome. So before we get into closing moments, we would love to give you a chance to tell our listeners how they can find you, learn more about you, and some of the work that you do. And we'll post all of this in our Facebook group for people to find too. But yeah, how can people learn more about you?
Well, thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun.
Yeah.
And for the listeners, if you're interested in working together, please visit my Instagram to book a session. I do have limited availability. I do specialize with clients ages 16 and up, particularly those with trauma histories. My approach is relational, and I focus on helping clients feel safe, seen, and understood. I do believe humor can be a powerful therapeutic tool, so I use it
Oh,
often.
yeah.
It helps clients create a safe proximity to difficult material and can open the door to healing conversations. You can follow my Instagram at Psychology Daily Care for mental health education, practical DBT tools, honest reflections on therapy process, and of course, plenty of humorous memes.
Yes, love those humorous memes. Yeah, perfect. We will definitely make sure to post your Instagram because it sounds like that's, I mean, not only where people can follow you for that content, like you just named, but that's also the pathway to people booking sessions with you, especially if they live in California, because that's where you are. So, perfect. Okay, so we're going to switch into closing moment. Hmm. So, wherever you are, just taking a moment to notice your breath without doing anything to change it. Just notice your natural in breath and out breath. And if you're able to adjust your body position to get a little more comfortable, I encourage you to do so. And also, if you can, to close your eyes and really let yourself settle in. And now imagine yourself who you are today, walking along a very long road. This road may look like a highway. This road could be a path in nature. whatever it looks like. Picture yourself walking forward. And now imagine yourself pausing in your steps and looking behind you. In some ways, back in the distance, far back along this road, you see a younger version of you. Seeing yourself during a time of your life where you were facing a lot of adversity. Where things were really hard and unknown in your life, and you didn't know what was coming next. A version of you where you maybe didn't feel much faith in yourself. So you see this version of yourself a long ways back along the road. And now that you see this younger version of you, imagine yourself turning around and walking towards them, or maybe even running if that feels good to you. Making your way back to where they are along this road. And when you reach them, just take a moment to hear what they have to say for how they're feeling. And make an effort to intuitively give them exactly what's needed right then. Whether that be a hug or words of comfort that they need to hear. Just being with them. And when you both feel ready, imagine the two of you together, starting to walk forward on the road. Maybe you're holding hands or have your arms around each other. Or if this is a much younger version of yourself, maybe you are carrying them. However it looks, this is you guiding them forward from the place they were in, feeling so much fear and uncertainty, into the life that you now live. Bringing them along with you. side by side, to face whatever challenges may come in the future together. Taking a couple of breaths here. As you let this image start to fade from your mind's eye. You may start to move your body, stretch as you need to, whatever feels good to you, before opening your eyes and coming back to the place you're in. Diana, thank you so much for being here, and thank you everyone for listening.
To learn more about us and the DBT skills we're teaching each week, join our Facebook group. Simply log in to your Facebook profile and search for DBT and Me podcast.